recording of this. Now we're good. So we're going to record it just so that if he wasn't able to join us, that they have the opportunity to come back and view it at a later time. So before I delve into our panel topics of how to survive and thrive in a changing housing market, just wanted to give everyone really brief updates to answer a couple of some frequently asked questions that I'm currently getting. So many of you may have heard that the federal government did announce from the Department of Homeland Security that they consider real estate services to be essential during this pandemic timeframe. Even though the federal government has given the guidance that real estate services are considered essential, it is still up to each individual state and community to determine what is essential and what is not essential during any type of government shutdown orders. So while the federal government has given that guidance as of this weekend, Pennsylvania still does not consider the real estate services to be a life-sustaining business. So there have been additional efforts by the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors to reach back out to the governor's office, highlighting the guidance from the federal government to consider at least partial services for the real estate industry to be considered essential. We have not heard back whether or not those efforts will be effective. I also know that there are some members of the state house who have reached out to the governor. The state house leadership has reached out to the governor with the same request that real estate as well as residential construction be considered an essential business and be allowed the opportunity to do business during the shutdown. So nothing has changed. So if you see things out there about questioning whether or not we're allowed to do it now, nothing has changed. And this is March 31st at 2 o'clock. So as we know, things are changing rapidly and constantly evolving with new guidance and new advice that's coming out there. But that is the latest and greatest as of March 31st at 2 o'clock. The other big question that I keep on getting right now from members is, can you apply for unemployment compensation? So as part of this federal stimulus package that was passed and signed into law by President Trump this past weekend, it does include funding and provisions so that independent contractors would have the opportunity to file for unemployment compensation. However, that unemployment compensation and the filing is going through all of the state governments. So you will have to apply through the Pennsylvania Department of Labor. However, do not do it right now. They are developing a separate application and separate guidelines and guidance for independent contractors to be able to file for that unemployment compensation. So the application is currently not available and it's not up there on the website yet. So as soon as that new application is available and the guidelines and guidance are out there, we will share that with all of our members. So please do not attempt to apply for unemployment compensation if you are an independent contractor right now, because you will be denied, and we don't want that to have impacts if you try to reapply again under the new application. So as soon as it's available, we will let everybody know and put all the guidance out there. So those are just a couple of the two most recent topics that I've been hearing a lot about and wanted to give you all that input and guidance. And now we'll get straight into our purpose for coming together today to talk a little bit how you can survive and thrive in a changing housing market. So I'm really pleased that we have two panelists who have joined us today. The first is Holly Purdy, and she is with RE/MAX of Gettysburg, and she has been licensed since 2002. So Holly got her license, and then she experienced a really great market uptick all the way through 2007, and then things, well, you know, we all know they went a little bit downward after that. Mr. Kim Moyer, he has been a realtor for 40 years now. He's a realtor emeritus, so he got licensed back in 1970.
79.
I was looking for the number, sorry, 1970. He was a baby. He was a baby when he got licensed, if you didn't know. Very young, very young. So he has experienced a couple of changing housing markets over the past 40 years and has been able to weather the storm and be successful through all of them. So welcome to you both. Thank you both for being here. So before we get into my questions, I just wanted to know, how are you guys feeling? I think everybody has that question and just wants to know how people are feeling. So Kim, how are you feeling?
Well, I'm sure everyone is getting information from the internet. I get emails all the time from different individuals, from trainers to management and all different things. So I'm sure you're all hearing things, but basically, in an easy sense, and I shouldn't make this easy because we've never really experienced anything just like this, but from what everyone is saying, is what not to do is panic. Do not panic. We all know this will pass. We've never seen it before, but we have seen some other things that are somewhat maybe similar, and we know we will get through it. So we don't want to panic. That doesn't mean that we aren't fearful. I mean, there are moments in time myself where I'm a little concerned or a little fearful, maybe not just for myself, but for others, family members, parents. But that doesn't really do anyone any good. So we try to, even though I think it's normal to have some fear and concerns, the biggest thing is we do know it will be better on the other side, and we just have to stay positive and really keep that in mind. Again, it doesn't mean we shouldn't think about it a little bit, or others, help others through it, because I'm sure we all, with our spouses at times, it's like we get on each other's nerves and maybe we have to go outside. As my wife said, let's remember we can still go outside, maybe go for a walk, do a little exercising, and this too will pass, and we'll all feel better if we do a little exercising and get out, get some fresh air, and then come back in and deal with it.
Yeah. Good advice. Holly, how are you feeling?
Hey, I'm feeling good. I feel like, it's going to be a long opportunity, but it's an opportunity still to do things that you always wanted to do and haven't had time. And that can be a lot of real estate related stuff, which I think we'll cover in this webinar. I think the best thing you can do is take care of yourself physically, mentally. Don't sit around and think too much. Keep busy, do house projects, keep in touch with people that you haven't had a chance to keep in touch with, and both personal and business related. And then, one of the things I want to focus on in this hour are things you can be doing productively for real estate to prepare yourself for whatever's coming.
Okay. So
it could be that there's a lot of pent-up opportunity once this is over, or it could go that we're going to be in a big downturn. Either way, there's things you can do to prepare. Sure. That's what I'm doing, is just focusing on being positive and keeping busy, moving forward. Don't spend your days watching the bad news.
That is definitely the truth. While we need to be informed, there is a point where you need to turn off the TV, you need to turn off your Amazon Echo radio, and you just need to have a moment to breathe and get some perspective, right?
Right.
So my next question is, how does this changing housing market, how does it feel the same, or how does it feel different from other housing market changes that you have personally gone through? So maybe we'll start with Holly with this one.
Well, of course, we went into this strong. We've had a great winter, a great last year. So it's jarring, unlike some others where it was more of a slow progression. And again, right now there's just a lot of uncertainty. So we don't know what direction it's going to go on, but there's going to be a lot of people who are hurting. We may see a lot of foreclosures again, which we saw in the 2008, 9, 10 time range. But I don't know, it's not related to the housing market. It's something exterior causing this, which is very different. But we came in strong. Hopefully we'll come out stronger than, not stronger than we were, but still some strength left to the market. It feels different because it's not a slow progression. It's a very abrupt happening.
Kim, what are your thoughts?
Well, most of the downturns that I've seen, and a lot of you folks probably online here weren't born, but back in the early 80s, when I experienced our first downturn, pretty much what happened, there was a short period of time where I had friends who offered me jobs in other sales industries. They said, if real estate's looking bad, maybe you should take another job. And thank goodness I didn't. But I thought about it. It might sound good to get a paycheck. But what I found is we really had to work harder. We had to double down. And you find ways in every market to make it happen. And we might have to work twice as hard when this is all over. Maybe we won't get to vacation this summer because we'll be that busy. But this is totally different because it's not tied to an economic turndown. It's because of the coronavirus, which I might apply more to like 9/11. When 9/11 happened, things weren't bad. Things were going pretty well. But when that happened, I mean, we shut down. I still remember that day of going outside, and it was like, the world ended. No one was doing anything.
Right.
And it took a while to figure that out. But that was a quick recovery in a sense, not that it was over, but it was pretty quick recovery. And that's more what I feel with this, is that even though we don't know if it's going to be the end of April, the end of May, but I think this is going to be more like that.
I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, trying to get a feel from where other people are about what this impact might be on the housing industry. And there's a really great podcast that I will suggest to all of you is Brian Buffini. He interviewed Dr. Lawrence Yun, the chief economist of the National Association of Realtors, last week. You can Google it. It's free. It's a really, really great podcast. The title of it was This Too Shall Pass. And one of the things that Dr. Lawrence Yun indicated is exactly what you both have said, that it's different because this wasn't driven by economic factors. It was driven by a medical factor, and how strong our housing market was going into it will serve us well as we work our way out of this. And what Dr. Lawrence Yun was indicating is that depending, and again, everything is dependent. We don't know when this invisible force that we're fighting, when we're going to be able to be outside and to be open to do everything that we've always done again. We don't know how long that's going to last, but depending on how long that lasts, what Dr. Lawrence Yun is indicating is that this could be a really big surge for the real estate industry once we get through this initial downturn. So what he is predicting, that you could be doing 12 months of income in a 9-month time period. So some good news and his thoughts and perspectives on how we should handle the outlook on this current pandemic that we're going through. But we're going through this pandemic. A lot of your businesses have slowed to this point. So I guess the big question that everyone has is, what should agents be doing during this time? So what is your advice of how agents should be spending this time when they're not able to be out there and showing houses? So Kim, we'll go to you first.
Well, Holly touched on it a little bit a couple minutes ago about doing things that maybe you haven't done for a while. So myself, I finished my CE classes, yay, online. So I'm finished with that. Those are good things to do, but also doing training. This job, as we all know, we're independent contractors. So as an independent contractor, we are basically, we're our own business. We're entrepreneurs. And one of the seminars I was listening to online defined entrepreneurs as entrepreneurship, I should say, the capacity and the willingness to develop, organize, and manage a business venture along with any of its risks in order to make a profit. So, we are real estate professionals if we do the proper training and follow the code of ethics, and we are professionals, not just independent contractors. So as our own business, it's I always say if it's to be, it's up to me. We need to prepare. And I always say the key is PDR, which I'm sure many of you have heard about. It's practice, drill, rehearse. So during this time, it's a great time for us to work on our skills, our real estate skills, but it takes practice. Any professional out there, you think about it, from athletes to doctors to attorneys, whatever, it was a lot of education, it was a lot of training. So we need to work on our skill during this time to become those great professionals that we want to be or are, and continue that. So practice, drill, rehearse.
It's I'm likening it to, so you've all have probably heard that expression of champions are made during the off season for athletes. So let's consider this your real estate off season, and how are you training to be that champion of real estate once we get out of this, once we come out of the off season? So Holly, what are your thoughts? What should agents be doing during this time?
This is kind of where the meat of what I want to talk about is. So I made kind of a list of things that, knowing that everybody's worried, or most people, certainly the newer agents, are worried about money right now. So I made a list of things that don't cost you any money to do, but you could be doing right now, or maybe not all of it, but soon anyway, hopefully. And that is, they're all lead generation things. I think right now we need to already be thinking about lead generation for when we come out of this, because there may be less buyers and sellers to deal with. Maybe not. Maybe we're going to come out and have the surge and then we're all happy. But if not, then we need to think about how we're going to get our clients. And so things that I have here are: work on your website. If you have one, beef that up now. Maybe put your client or, your past client reviews on there if you don't have them on there. Anything that differentiates you from another agent when somebody's searching online. Look at your Zillow profile, Truly, or Realtor.com, all the profiles, make sure they're up to date. Work on your listing presentation. There may be, it may not just fall in your lap as easily as it was when the market was strong, if it's not as strong coming out. So make sure you have a good listing presentation ready to go. Ask prior clients for reviews if you have not already. Maybe you were busy and didn't do that before. Now might be a time to get client reviews. I find that I get a lot of online client, leads from Zillow, basically because I have a lot of reviews on there and people see that. You could work on, if you're techie, work on your social media. Be out there in front of people, make them, put yourself top of mind to people. I'm not a social media person, but if you are, prepare some videos with some information that might be helpful to people. Call your clients, ask them how you can be helpful, how you can, how are they? Just touch base with them, make them think of you when this is all over. This is a big one. I haven't done it yet, but I have thought that I may at some point. There's some volunteer opportunities right now. That's something I do normally. A way of lead generation maybe for me. I'm on the Arts Council in Gettysburg. It's been a good lead generation source, but maybe you deliver meals to people. Maybe you, whatever you can do to help volunteer at this point, do it. And then wear your little company logo shirt while you're doing it or something. Maybe that's a terrible thing to do. I don't know, but you're helping and they see you and they see your company. Maybe it'll help, maybe they'll think of you. And it's a good thing to do, and it'll help your spirits. Normally I would say go to networking events, Rotary events, whatever, women's clubs, men's clubs, community events. I'm a put yourself in front of people and they'll find out you're a realtor and ask you questions and then think of you a person. That's the way I get most of my business, to be honest, other than, past clients organically. Maybe eventually anyway, there's a teaching or speaking opportunity for you. I haven't done this either, but, libraries, you can ask a library if you can hold a seminar for first-time home buyers or whatever, or how to navigate through what's happening now. Put yourself in front of people is the message. You can send out mailers. That will cost money. Try to, farm, good old fashioned farming. Like Kim said, practice scripts. If you can find scripts, if you can't find them, Google real estate scripts. Look at suggestions of what to say when you come out of all this, when you're trying to get new clients. Good for you. You're taking this webinar. Do any of that you can. Get any little bits of information that you can. Send out cards to people, anybody, clients or friends or anybody. Just touch base with them or thank them for whatever they've done for you in the past. I am right now, partly in preparation for this, reading this book called Shift. I'm a RE/MAX agent. I bleed RE/MAX. This was written by Gary Keller. It's all about how to handle a shift in the market. And it's an excellent book. I recommend it. I don't know, if you're newer, which I assume, probably a fair number of people tuned in here are, you may need some guidance when you get out of this on how to deal with a market that's going differently than it has been. Maybe you can talk to an experienced agent and shadow them on a couple of listing appointments to see how they discuss, pricing your house maybe lower instead of higher, just the conversations you have, because sellers are going to have a different conversation. They're still going to want to keep their prices up. Maybe that'll happen. I hope it does. But if it doesn't, you're going to have to know how to discuss that with them. That's it for that topic.
I think that's some really solid advice and a lot of takeaways there. Just to follow up on two things. So as both Kim and Holly alluded to, take this time to develop your craft. And the really good news is there's a lot of great free resources out there right now. So you're watching this webinar, this is one of them. But NAR just recently launched their Right Tools Right Now campaign. So there is a plethora of tools and educational free platforms out there that all of you can take advantage of. Go to the NAR website and you'll be able to see everything that they offer. Patricia Carey also commented that people should be trying to complete their commitment to excellence. The commitment to excellence is a free endorsement by the National Association of Realtors. It's a self-guided tool where you can get badges for all the different things that you need for your profession to really go above and beyond the average realtor. So this is a really great time for you to go through that self-guided program and get your commitment to excellence endorsement. But just one of the things that Holly also said is reach out to your past clients. And maybe not necessarily to talk to them if they have any real estate needs. I think you should maybe take that sales hat off right now and throw it to the side, but maybe you're just reaching out to them to see, how are you doing? That simple, how are you doing, that reach out from someone you haven't heard from in a while, I think can really do wonders. And I'll tell you a story. Someone on this panel gave me a call the day my son's after school program teachers were doing a parade in our neighborhood. And my son, Levi, who's 6, and I have a 4-year-old as well, we're at the door and all these teachers are lined up in these cars and they're waving with their signs and Levi's jumping with excitement. He was so excited to see these teachers he hadn't seen in 2 weeks. And, I became a little emotional because it was so great that they reached out to make that connection with the kids, and it made me teary-eyed. And then of course Kim Moyer calls me right after this all happens and asks me, he was just checking on me to see if I'm okay. And of course I'm crying at that time. And I'm like, I don't have a cold, I'm actually crying. And then later that day he came by and he dropped cupcakes off on my front porch. So it was really like these opportunities to make connections not for business purposes, but just to reach out to individuals as human beings, I think is so important and so impactful. So I think you have that opportunity to do that now. And I think you could harness it and develop your past client relationships even more. So just a little advice. So one of my other questions is maybe a little bit late right now, but how do you prepare for changing housing markets financially? What steps do you take personally, or advice do you give agents who might be newer in the business, what they should be doing to develop their reserves and their resources to ensure that they can weather a housing market downturn? Maybe we'll start with Kim.
Well, some of the things that I was looking at, and Holly mentioned about Gary Keller, I was reviewing some of his things that he was saying as well, and some other folks, that this is probably a time to, if you haven't done it, make a business plan. You know, so many people get into business but don't really have a plan. And this will be a very good time to sit down and look at your business plan. Now, there are three components, really main components of a business plan that you can look at. And it's the business concept, your marketplace description, financial information. You know, you want to look at your strategies that you're going to get involved with, problem solving, things along those lines. But what is your business plan? You're going to get in this business. So some who are in it now, did you think about the amount of money? I normally say to folks, you might want to have 6 months to 1 year worth of income. And that can be difficult saved up. But if we don't have some money set aside during this period of time, what can you do? I think some of the things you could look at, if you own a home, and I know we talked about not wanting to go into debt, but it might be something to look at that you have some equity and maybe get a line of credit. It's low interest right now. Maybe pull some equity to get you through the next couple months. And some people say, well, I hate to go into debt, you know, more. How am I going to pay it back? I think we all truly believe that in the next month, 2 months, 3 months, this market will rebound and will be very busy. We're going to have to work hard, but you'll be making the income to be able to pay those loans back if you have to. And a little story that I'll give from many years ago from a friend of mine who, this is going back in harder days, back in the late 80s, where a friend of mine was a very good salesperson. And this will kind of go with some of the going out there and practicing your trade or your skills. There are some people that are, I think, natural born salespeople, but in general, most of us have to do a little practice on your sales to get better at your craft. This gentleman happened to be one that I considered a natural born salesperson. He could sell ice to the Eskimos. You know, he was very, very good. So he worked a lot of listings. He had a lot of listings in the fall and winter of this particular year, but things were not selling. And I said to him, he was in debt. Now this is, again, have to remember, going back in the late 80s, he was in debt about $2,500. He said, I just can't stand being in debt, $2,500. You know, I just don't have any money coming in. I said, look, you have to wait till spring. The spring market is always better. Your listings, that you have good listings, you price them right, they're going to sell, but you got to hang in there. Bottom line is he didn't. He just couldn't do it. By the end of the year, he was just too freaked out, and he left the real estate business, went into another sales job where he got paid a salary. Well, sure enough, when spring came around, guess what? All of his listings sold. So it was good for the agents that picked up the listings, you know, that all his listings sold, but you have to give it some time. So if you need a little money to get you over the next month or two, if you love this business, I think that's what you need to look at.
Yeah, and I think too that maybe encourage members to take a look at what some of the packages that are now available through the Small Business Administration. So the SBA, check out that right now. Some of the guidelines aren't available yet, but there are a lot of loans and opportunities that small businesses can take advantage of. One of them, some of you may have individuals who are, my doorbell just rang. I haven't heard that doorbell in a long time. That makes me a little nervous, right? It's like, oh, the germs are coming. Okay. But so the Small Business Administration has all these loans that are available. Some of you may actually have assistants who you have hired as independent contractors, and they're your employees. And they have something called the Paycheck Protection Plan that you essentially could apply for a loan to pay for your payroll expenses for your employees for the next week. And that loan is forgivable as long as you continue to employ the employees for the next week at 100%. You don't furlough them or you keep them compensated. So a lot of the guidelines are still being developed and out there, but these are things that you all should be checking out to see what are the resources that are available to you to get you over this potential financial burden. So Holly, want to get your thoughts on how should agents prepare for this financially?
Well, I have some, I had my own rude awakening back in between October 2008 and March 2009. I think that, or it may have been the next year. I don't remember the year, but I went through a spell where I was working every day, just as hard as ever, had clients, everything was in place, and I didn't have a settlement for 6 months. And it was devastating. We were not prepared for it. My husband's self-employed. Maybe we had some reserve, but not enough. And I remember barely getting through it, running up credit cards. We were eating, eggs for dinner and turning off lights in the house and just doing everything we could. So my suggestion, and this is really for the newer people, is cut expenses now. Don't wait until you don't have money. If everything comes back quickly, great. You'll have extra money, and good for you, good for everybody. But I would say, first of all, cut expenses now. Go through anything you subscribe to, anything you're spending money on that is now maybe frivolous. Cut. And that's why I gave the list of all the things you can do to generate leads that don't cost money right now. I wouldn't recommend now's the time to spend money on lead generation just because you may need that money. I don't know. Certainly a line of credit or home equity loan could be a possibility. At least look into that in case you need it. Mortgage companies, I know my son told me yesterday his mortgage company offered to not charge them their mortgage for the next 3 months. Maybe look into that. As you said, look into loans, and just in case, cut expenses now. Don't wait until it's necessary, and look for whatever opportunities you have to get money in case you need it to get through, because we will get through this. Like Kim said, it's going to be good again. Maybe it will only be a month. That would be amazing, but I don't think anybody expects that. I think it's gonna take a while, but hang in there.
Okay. I guess my next question would be, if you could leave everyone here with your best one piece of advice, what would that be? I guess we'll start with Holly this time.
Ooh. Do you have something prepared there, Kim? I can say something, but if I had a minute to think, that would be better.
Okay, Kim.
Well, let me just give you a couple things, and there's a couple other things I wanted to add too. But to me, really, I know it can seem like the end of the world. When I was much younger and went through some downturns, it was like, are you going to make it through? But I can tell you, in every one, which I've been through since 1979, we have made it through. Was it easy? No. I mean, certainly it was not easy, but that's why I talked about doubling down on your efforts. This is going to be working twice as hard, and it will work out. And Holly mentioned about cutting expenses and things like that. It's not really the time, as I read different things, to go out and spend more money on trying to get leads from Zillow or whatever. There are much better ways that we can try to get leads that cost us very little money and not that we'll ever do away with Zillow, but do away with some of these more expensive leads. And a lot of that is on the social marketing. That doesn't really cost us anything. Facebook, there are over, if you don't know this already, and I have to look at my notes here, there are over 1 billion daily users that are active on Facebook. So you can look at Facebook as a way to get your leads. And some of the ways that you should do that with the social media and Facebook are using landing pages. Now, I'm not that familiar with landing pages myself. I have some more tech competent support staff that one of them sitting next to me, but it's okay. You probably already know it's my wife, so we're not practicing social distancing. But with the Facebook and these landing pages, you can it equals leads if you get into these landing pages. One of the other things is check out your website that it's mobile friendly, because if people out there driving around, which I've had some people who I know aren't supposed to be out there, but they'll call me and say, oh, we drove by this house, we walked around it, we want to see it. I'm like, okay, well, we can't see it right now. We have to wait, but people are still doing these things. So I think Holly even mentioned it before, is really look at your websites and look at everything. So we can stay busy getting our business in order. And when I talked about the plan, having a business plan, the biggest thing that I think I missed on that was goals. You got to start setting goals now. Let's set our goals of what we want to happen. And it's funny how when you set goals, things tend to happen. Some things are out of our control, but let's get those goals in line now. Let's get our business plan. Let's get our finances that we're comfortable. An agent did tell me yesterday, and maybe Shauna, you can verify, or Holly, that they're allowing you to access your 401ks if you have a retirement plan without any penalties. Not that we want to hit from that, but if it's just going to be a temporary borrow, this really feels to me, and not that any of us have ever gone through anything quite like this, but it does seem to me more like short term, because it was not caused by a bad economy or worries in the economy. So let's all hang in there together. We can make this happen.
That's good advice. And yes, I also read that you could access your 401k funds without taking that 10% hit in taxes when you take it out. So that is something I've read so many sources from so many different places. I can't verify exactly the source of it, but I have read that in a couple different spots. So Holly, did you want to add what your best piece of advice is?
Absolutely. I think looking over what I wanted to say is, I think the most important thing is to be positive and project positivity to your clients. People are attracted to people who are positive. If you tell them the market's terrible and you don't know what's going to happen, are they going to want to call you when they want to do something? Or are they going to want to call somebody that says, yeah, I can help you. I'm busy. You can be busy. It doesn't, I'm not saying be dishonest, but just be positive, and people will be attracted to that and call you before they call somebody who's negative when the time comes. So stay positive for your own sake and to help with, getting business when this is over.
Great. We have a couple of questions from the attendees. So the first one is, so also if anybody would like to ask a question, you can type it in the chat bar, you can put it in the Q&A. We'll make sure we answer all the questions. So the first question we have is, how are you guys handling when you get new business right now? Sellers that want to list or buyers that want to buy. How are you handling this, and what are you saying to them? So anybody want to go first?
Holly,
I'll be honest. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Holly. Go ahead.
I haven't had a lot of it. I have not had a lot of, so one thing I had yesterday was somebody that had been watching a property and it went under contract, and they wanted to know how it went under contract and how the people saw it. And I contacted the agent and they said they were buying it sight unseen. Is that true? I don't know. I'm encouraging my sellers to keep their houses on the market because there are people on the internet looking all the time. I don't think it's a time to worry about days on market. But I also, I don't know how you would list a house right now without, I like to do a virtual tour and professional pictures. So unless somebody had to, I would recommend waiting. And buyers, unless somebody's willing to do something sight unseen or in a Zoom meeting setting where the seller is showing the property and you trust that with a lot of contingencies in the contract, I think it's a very risky thing to do, and I don't necessarily encourage it. But if somebody really wants to, that would be a way to do it.
Kim, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that people are really concerned themselves. So most of my sellers, I just had a call today from someone who was thinking about listing as May 1st. So they're actually calling it a month ahead of time and saying, what do you think? And I said, well, I think reality is we still need to wait and see. We as good stewards of the real estate industry, I don't think want to risk getting anyone sick or entering someone's house and maybe they were sick and picking something up. I think we would all feel terrible about that. So until we get the go-ahead, I'm just really relaying to my clients that by state regulations at this point, we cannot see people in person. I can't come to your house. I can give you some thoughts and get prepared, but I have had other sellers who outright sent me emails like, hey, until this is over, we're not doing anything. I think that's probably the prudent thing to do, because how do you really access it to the most buyers if you're not able to fully market it? We did consider taking it off, the current listings off the market, just on hold. But then we thought about it again, that, well, if we do that, people who are out there looking on the internet will lose that. If they're looking through Zillow and Trulia and those places, our properties would no longer be showing on those sites. So we decided to keep everything active. Really haven't had many calls from people trying to see them. I've had a couple people who have called on different things, but they understand at this point to hold off. So I'm saying hold off on listings, showings, same thing. Now, I did have one buyer, as Holly mentioned, on a property. Maybe it was the same one, but probably not. But it was a property where it's now listed as active contingent. And I asked the agent, and she did receive an offer contingent on seeing full price, contingent on seeing the property at some point. So I do tell my buyers that when they say, well, is there anything we can do? I say, well, if you're willing to do it, you could write an offer contingent upon seeing it at some point. No one's taken me up on that at this time, but that is a possibility based on pictures.
And just to follow up on that, just in case anybody doesn't know, that listings in Bright MLS, if you have them in the active or the active contingent, they have waived the requirement for the property to be needing to be physically shown. The only requirement now is that you just need to have one listing photo. So you need to have at least one listing photo on the property for it to be in the active or the active contingent. And you also do need to be willing to accept offers and share them with your seller if they are presented to you. Also, the days on market, as Holly alluded to, will continue with the active and the active contingent. But as I think as both Holly and Kim alluded to, is that you're going to have to explain that no matter what. If you pull them, if you put them to temporarily on hold, they will not syndicate to those third-party websites, which is what Kim's advice was, is he's keeping his clients in the active status. So they're going out to those third-party websites like Realtor.com, Zillow, and brokerage websites. Okay. Next question, you may have already alluded to this one with your answers, but what is your opinion on best representing a seller client if they ask if they should list now or wait?
I
Pretty
advocate.
much answer, yeah. Wait, did you say wait, Holly? I think
I did.
Yeah.
So you're telling them to wait. Are you giving them a date of when you think, or you're saying, let's just talk? What are you saying?
I'm staying in contact with them. I'd say, let's give it a week or two here, see what happens. Those other folks, I'm pretty much saying now, since the president said through the end of April, I'm thinking maybe we wait to the end of April, but we'll see. If the governor opens us up for business, like in Maryland as an essential business, then that's all going to change. I mean, so that could change, and then we'd be back to business sooner. But even if that happens, I would be very cautious, just from the standpoint of not wanting anyone to be able to get sick from us doing something. So I'd be still cautious, even if they open us up.
It wouldn't be a bad idea to have them, proactively filling out the seller disclosure and getting, send them information on staging their house and things, so that, maybe even do the listing paperwork other than coming up with a price, just to have everything ready when, ready to pull the trigger when the time comes.
Sure. Yeah, it's good idea.
That's a good thought. So the next question is, how do you think it affects our industry to hear there are agents still showing homes? What should we do if we know there are agents showing homes or builders who are allowing walkthroughs of vacant properties? So I'll just take the second part of that question. I'll let you guys think about what you think that looks in our industry. So the second part is, what should you do if you know that there are agents who are showing or builders who are showing the properties, even if they are vacant? So right now, PAR's guidance is that the no showings, no open houses, that applies to all properties universally, whether or not they're occupied or whether or not they're vacant. That is PAR's guidance, is that there are no showings, no open houses, irregardless if they're vacant. If you know, and I know because I've gotten phone calls, I've gotten lots of phone calls from agents who want to give me lists of other agents they know who are out there showing homes. And this is my advice to those agents is, I think you need to have conversations with your office managers and your brokers about these circumstances and your concerns, and have your office managers and brokers reach out to that agent's office manager and broker to have a conversation about what they're seeing and the concerns that they have. Because it's interesting, I often think those broker to broker, office manager conversations can be very, very successful when they're peer to peer that way. Some of the calls that I have gotten, though, and people who have said so-and-so showing a home, and I know that they're with a brokerage company who I know I spoke with their broker or their office manager, and their company policy has been to stop showings and stop open houses. Sometimes the office manager and or broker may not know that their agents are not complying with what they've put out as their own personal brokerage policy. The other piece of it is I've also started to get phone calls from consumers, and I've talked to at least 6 consumers now about their concerns about agents showing properties. And in the one particular case, in a couple of them, I know they already filed with the real estate commission. And in the one case, I know that they were watching the house like a hawk, as they said, and they were going to be calling the police if they saw anyone attempting to show the property. I don't want that to happen to any of our agents. And I do personally think that the state police and our local police officers have a lot on their plate right now to have to worry about agent showings homes. So, I guess the plea would be, is it worth it? Is it worth it to potentially have a sanction against your real estate license? Is it worth it to have the state police show up and issue you a warning or a sanction in regards to the shutdown orders? So, it would be helpful if you really took a couple of minutes to think about whether or not that's worth it, and whether or not you can hold off on doing that type of practice until the governor releases his shutdown order over the real estate industry. So that's just my piece of it there. But so what do you guys think? What do you think this does to our industry when we have some agents who are following the guidance of PAR and some who are not?
I don't think it's good at all, obviously. So I'm not doing it, and that's what I hope other people will adhere to. I don't know, you gave the only advice on how to handle it, but I don't think it's good at all. It makes clients question, are you doing what you can be doing? If somebody else is showing a property, why aren't you? It's not a good thing to have out there.
Kim, any thoughts?
As I said earlier, I'm not showing properties. I'm not doing face-to-face. I'm not listing. So far, my clients have been understanding. I'm also, though, probably not going to be a policeman and police other agents' actions. I don't know the situations, what's going on with them. You never know. There's some questions about, well, if the house is sold and we're going to settlement, how about doing a walkthrough? It's hard for me to imagine if I'm going to settle on a house at 4:00 this afternoon, that the buyer can't walk through it at 3:00 when he's going to own it at 4:00 and be able to move right into it. That to me seems like that is a reasonable thing to do. I don't know how others are going to think about that, or you, Shauna, or the state, but fortunately that hasn't happened to me personally, but I don't know if that makes sense to you, but I think there's some gray issues.
I don't know, but my understanding is that there is a distinction between contracts that are going to settlement and what needs to be done to get them to settlement versus new business. Is that true, Shauna? Well,
PAR's advice is that all in-person real estate activities need to cease. And that's their guidance that they put out there. So to them, there is no distinction between final walkthroughs versus a showing versus an open house. It's all under that same thought process that there are no in-person activities. I know that there are some brokerage companies' legal counsel who've advised their brokerages differently. And I know that PAR has heard those arguments, but still their advice from the Pennsylvania level is that in-person real estate activities, there's no distinction between final walkthroughs versus showings. They're taking it the same, that there's no in-person physical activities that should be occurring. So, couple of other questions here. Oh, before I leave this, so I did get, someone had emailed me and said, this is making me look bad. They were talking about agents showing properties early. This is making me look bad to my clients because I'm not willing to take them to go see properties. This is making me look bad. And I wrote back, I think the reverse. I said, I think that's making you look good. Like, your clients hired you for a reason because you are a professional. You're an ethical realtor who is a law-abiding professional member of this industry, and you are upholding the standards of this industry and of what the current rules and regulations allow you to do, and you're not willing to sacrifice that for anyone. So maybe you can flip that around to say, there's a reason that you hired me. You hired me because of the professional you think I am, and by me not showing you homes right now is proving to you that I am that professional that you hired. Just maybe some way you could flip that around.
That was great.
yeah, I like that.
So does anyone know, if we list a home, do we have to have a sign on the property? I can't get to my signs at my office right now. So I know the answer to that one. There's no requirement that you have to have a sign in the yard. So that's one of the marketing tools, but there's nothing that says you have to have a sign in the yard from the Pennsylvania Real Estate Commission. Okay, next question.
So, well, let me ask you a question, Shauna. So if you have a sign, can I put it out? I'm not seeing anyone in person, but I'm still at the property.
Yeah, I still think the answer is no in-person physical activity. So I would probably say no, if you want me to be safe and follow the legal guidelines from PAR. Are either of you dual licensed in Pennsylvania and Maryland? Holly, are you dual licensed?
I am not.
I'm not.
Oh,
I'm not.
So we won't be able to answer this. So, but how has the shutdown affected your business in both states, since PA is operating differently than Maryland? Is it difficult to keep the rules straight? Oh, go ahead, Holly. You want to say something?
Well, my understanding is Maryland went into shutdown mode as of 8 o'clock last night. I would expect they're on the same level as we are as of 8 o'clock last night.
I think they're still considered essential
Yeah.
in Maryland.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
What I've been advising folks is for your Maryland, if you're dual licensed in Maryland, you really need to go and listen to the advice from the Maryland Association of Realtors and what they're putting out there, because it can be confusing that we have a lot of geographic differences on how each state is handling it. From what I understood, Maryland said that they were seeking the guidance from the governor of Maryland's office since the shutdown going into place, if they can still offer those in-person activities. And I haven't been watching it closely, so I don't know what guidance the governor's office has come back from the Maryland Association of Realtors, but I'd ask. But just as a side note, I know that there were a lot of Maryland agents who were calling listings in Pennsylvania to show properties in Pennsylvania because they had their reciprocal PA license, and they weren't aware that Pennsylvania, under the government orders, had indicated that there's no in-person activity. So there were notifications that I had asked to my counterparts, the other association executives in Maryland, to send to their members to say the Pennsylvania rules are different. And it doesn't matter if your license is located in Maryland, you have to follow the Pennsylvania rules when you're showing properties in Pennsylvania, which we are offering the guidance, no showings, no open houses. So that message was sent. So I hope some of those requests for showings from the Maryland agents have started to slow down. Okay, another comment. I have 2 upcoming closings in April, and buyers are going to do their own walkthroughs. I'm advised not to attend the walkthrough and closing. The buyers are okay with this, and so are the sellers. Okay. Next question is, so that was more of a comment. Next one is, the seller can't unlock the door, so the buyers could walk through it if it is vacant. So I think, so this is like another question. So I've heard that this is happening too, that sellers are just opening doors and then buyers are coming through for showings without their agent present, and the agents are potentially encouraging their buyers and sellers to do this without the agent present so that they can do this showing. You know, my advice here is to be really, really careful with that, because do you really want your buyers and your being unrepresented going through a listed property? And the other, you really need to have some conversations around broker's legal counsel if you should do that at all. I'm very conservative when it comes to some of this stuff. I would not advise it. I'm not an attorney, I'm not a broker, but I wouldn't advise that you do that. Also, I would be concerned that since York County is under shelter-in-place orders right now, if you are having your sellers open up their doors to allow buyers in, could they potentially be violating the shelter-in-place orders in York County by doing that? And that's not an essential need at the moment to be doing that. So I would be very, very careful if that's the path that you are going to go down, and you need to get some legal advice. You need to get your broker advice before you do anything like that.
Absolutely.
So.
Yep.
Okay. This is from an appraiser. So what has PAR stated regarding appraisers? According to a webinar I listened today, the federal government last Saturday included appraisers in the essential list. I do not know any appraiser currently doing interior observations, but what does PAR say about exterior observations? So right now, the Pennsylvania Association, unless they've changed their guidance since 2 o'clock on March 31st, because we know this stuff changes. But when you look at the essential list in Pennsylvania versus the non-life sustaining businesses and what can and cannot be open, there isn't anything specific that relates to appraisers. And it does say real estate services, and PAR has taken that to include appraisers, and therefore they shouldn't be doing in-person activity. However, I know that there are some appraisers who've gotten legal counsel and say that they fall under the financial services because they're a vendor for financial service, and therefore they believe that they're considered a life-sustaining business and are doing in-person activities. So PAR considers them to be part of the real estate industry and part of the non-essential piece of it. I do know that there have been some Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have reduced some of their strict guidelines that you may not necessarily need to do an interior inspection, that you can do a drive-by appraisal as opposed to doing an interior inspection on the property. But I know some appraisers are very, very reluctant to do it because they're still liable for that appraisal report, and they don't feel that they're able to do the appraisal to full justice without having that type of interior inspection. So I guess my best advice for the appraisers is look to the guidance of the Appraisal Institute, look to the guidance of your own legal counsel, and look what PAR is also putting together, and then make the decisions based upon that guidance. Another question. My question is for someone who is doing a final walkthrough before settlement. How are you handling that? And I think we talked about that one a little bit earlier, that, you know, the guidance from PAR is that real estate agents are not making a differentiation between walkthroughs versus showings, that there shouldn't be any in-person activity.
And I think you could add again, talk to your brokers and see how they want you to handle it.
Yep. I have another question here. Could an addendum between the seller and the buyer be written up for the buyer to perform a pre-settlement walkthrough without their respective agents as a way to protect ourselves as agents? I think what I would say, there again, I have to keep on giving my disclaimers, not an attorney, not a broker, but I would always caution you, when you start to develop your own language for addendums and your own language to do things, you could be potentially getting into that area of practicing law versus providing a professional real estate service. So if you would like to develop some sort of an addendum, you really should get legal counsel to put that addendum together for you rather than try to write something on your own. I know that there are some agents who've gone through and created hold harmless waivers while they're trying to practice and show properties right now. And I would really caution you against doing that. First of all, I don't think it provides you any, from what I've heard from many legal scholars, it provides you very little protection to begin with. And two, you're treading very dangerously into practicing law, and you don't want to get into that area. Kim, you mentioned saving about 6 months of income. How much should you reserve from each paycheck to prepare for tax payments and savings percentage-wise?
That's an interesting question, because some of the online things I've been reading, they talk about saving 25% of your paycheck just for taxes. I personally think that number is low because, of course, you have to know what tax bracket you're in. But as an independent contractor, we're responsible for the 16% Social Security tax alone. The state is 3.2, I believe, right? 3.2, 3.7. Is it 3.7? And then you have the county at 1. So, I mean, quickly we're at, over 20% just for Social Security tax, state and local. So then you add your income tax bracket in there. This will sound like a crazy high number, but I think you almost need 40 to 50% of your paycheck towards taxes and maybe putting some back for savings or retirement. So that leaves you about half of what you make to spend on other things. Someone else might have an opinion on that, but that's
I have an opinion. One thing you can do is look back to the year before, assuming you've been in the business and it's somewhat consistent. Look at what your total, gross commission was and what you ended up paying in taxes, and look at what percentage that is, and
Sure,
apply
good
that
idea.
to your commission for the next year.
It's a good idea.
Because there are expenses to take off of the commission, and there's, potentially itemized deductions and exemptions and standard deductions and things that come off that number. 25% may be low unless you're in a, in a lower tax bracket. But that's what, personally, that's what I do, is look at what, the year before, what that percentage ended up being. And that's what I withhold.
Good thought.
Yeah.
There was another comment here that I believe this pertains to like the pre-settlement walkthroughs. It says check your E&O insurance as well to see what's covered and what isn't covered. So I think that's probably good advice as well. Are there any other questions out there from the attendees that we haven't covered? Give a moment just to see if anybody types anything or sends anything through. We're not seeing, are there any final comments that you would like to share, Kim?
Yeah, I'm never at a loss of words, am I? Well, thank you for this time, and I'd like to thank all the participants for their time as well, and hopefully you got some things out of it. But what I'd like to end with is, again, looking at some things online, preparing for this. 6 traits of a successful real estate professional. Here you go. 6 traits of a successful real estate professional. Number 1 is to be honest. Number 2, to be innovative. Number 3 is to be loyal. Number 4 is to be professional. Number 5 is to be self-motivated. And number 6 is to be sociable. So right now, other than online or talking to people, it's hard to be sociable, at least in person, but we can be sociable like this. This is my first Zoom attempt, except for the other day when I had a run through. So look at this, I got my CE done and I got my Zoom experience, and now, I'm ready to roll. So you can teach old dogs new tricks. So again, everyone, hang in there. I truly believe we will be through this. It may not be 2 weeks, may not be 30 days. It may take us 60 days. I'm kind of counting on Memorial Day to celebrate. But hang in there.
Me too. Me too. Any final thoughts, Holly?
Yeah, so early on, I saw a chat come in that you didn't mention, thanking you and RAYAC for all you've been doing. And I just want to point that out and say, yes, we all very much appreciate what you've been doing. And thank you all for attending. Thank you, Shauna, for asking us to do this, because it made me think. And, I think we should all take some time every day to think about what we can be doing. And so thank you. Thank you so much for all you do.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure. And there are lots of comments saying thank you to the panelists, to both of you. There is a special request for a cupcake delivery to Sue Pindle. So Kim, but yes, this has been recorded, so we will put it out on our social media channel. So if anyone didn't have an opportunity to sit in, we will share it with our other members. So thank you both to our panelists for being here. I really appreciate it. I think it has truly brightened everyone's day. I think we have things to us.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.